Hi everyone, it's Torona Gale Hawkins, retired psychic medium, and I'm here today with new things that I found out. Some things I had the suspicion of, but which I've actually found out this week. And I know these various companies and things. I won't name them, but you'll guess or you'll know because you'll perhaps have similar wherever, whatever part of the world that you're in. But things really hit home to me this last week, and I really do feel that I was meant to experience everything that there was all within 1 week. It's been absolutely incredible. But if I'm meant to know something, or if anybody's done anything bad to me or whatever, I always find out in the end. Sometimes it's quickly, sometimes it'll take a year, maybe a couple of years, but the universe always looks after me that way, and I always get to find things out. And this is what's made it such a interesting week. Now, I'm going to start off, I'm going to revert back to something that I remember from 28, 30 years ago, when I was working, doing big shows and things in London. I spent a lot of time in London in those days, I can assure you. And I was doing, can't remember the name of the show, but it was one really big, like, health and well-being show, very well planned out, and it went over either 2 or 3 days. So obviously I got to see a good few people, and I met some really, really interesting people. And before the shows, not all would do it. Some of the psychics wouldn't mix with others. I used to like to just go round to some of the stall holders and have a little chat, or at least just say good morning before we started. And that was not to tout for business, let me add. It was just, I think it was nice if you're sharing space with someone over 3 days to just be a little bit polite and, just have a word and ask what they're doing and or what they're selling. So this is how it happened. Well, I was talking to this very, very interesting and very beautiful lady. Now, in those days, obviously, I was a lot younger. So this lady would have been maybe well in her 50s. And she'd got the most amazing skin. And I mean amazing. And she was selling her products, which contained honey. And I bought one from her. I got it discounted, which was very nice of her. And I tried it, and it was wonderful. And she even shown a photo of her mum, who was 81, and she'd not got a wrinkle on her face. She looked absolutely amazing. I mean, obviously, she didn't tell me all that she'd done with it, and I certainly wouldn't have stole anybody's idea anyway. But I'd enough to do in my life with, all the work that I do, and all the different things that I do. If I was to list them all, you'd honestly think I was bragging, but I have all the certificates, to go with it. So, I'm not trying to be a clever person, it's just because I've always enjoyed learning. Now, after talking with this lady and after seeing the photo of her mum, it looked incredible, and trying a little bit of the skincare, which I would try again once I was finished the show and I was home, and it was amazing. But I remember at the show the lady telling me, the owner, that she'd been threatened by some of the big corporations because this product worked, and I suppose they wanted it, or it could cause problems for them with products they were selling. I think that was an eye-opener, because I never realised just how vicious these corporations are. And she was a very nice lady, and she'd done all this for herself. And, I thought, oh, well, when I see her again, I'm going to tell her just how good this cream is. And I never did get to see her again, and I never got to see her on shows again, although she done well, and the product, as I say, from the jar I bought was absolutely amazing. And it should have stuck in my mind more than it did, really, but I put it down to being busy, being younger. But I often thought of that lady and wondered whatever happened to her, which I don't know. I never got any further news. But to be threatened for a face cream because it works is a big deal in my eyes, and it's sad when she had invented this herself. I mean, since there's lots of other products that's come out that's got honey in it, and some of them are excellent. I'm not saying they're not, but never as good as that one that I tried from this lady. So my point is, the corruption was way back then, but a lot of us didn't, realise this sort of thing. Now, the next thing this week, the first thing this week that brought a few more things home to me and made me actually remember that experience with this lady selling a natural made moisturiser, came from a visit to an hygienist that I went to this week. Now, the week prior, I went to see my dentist. Through my own fault, a few days before the dental visit, I had taken a big gulp of tea, forgetting that it was scalding hot, and my mouth was full of like little ulcers, from it being burnt out. The top roof of the mouth and around my teeth. But I carried on, and I kept, I was still brushing, doing everything I should, and also I was using a lot of mouthwash as well as salt water, just to make sure nothing else turned nasty. Well, when I went in to see the dentist, I said to her, have my gums improved? Are they a lot better than they were before? Because with a few crooked teeth at the bottom, I tend to get problems, but I'm using all I'm told to use. So she looked at them and she said, yeah, she said, they are excellent. It's just the ulcers that I'm concerned with. She said, obviously you burnt your mouth, as you've explained. She said, Nick, it could be that. She said, but I've got to keep check of you just in case, because with older people, that can mean something else. She didn't say what the something else was, but that's beside the point. So when I got an appointment come through as a text message, a week later to see the hygienist that I went to visit this week, I walked into the room and I just expected she would check the ulcers, just see how they're going. Well, whether she was aware of what had happened or not, I don't know, but I did make it clear what had happened. So she starts with the teeth, and normally I've seen her before, and she's like, it puts on a very pleasant act, which I now know was an act. And sadly, because I haven't got the money, I am an NHS patient, which I've no problem with that. I was working from 15, paying my tax and insurance, so why shouldn't I get it? But by golly, was I made to feel like the poor beggars must have felt in the 1930s, when the peasants had to go through the back door, and only the rich that was paying for it could walk through the front door. Now, she started going through my gums and criticising, asking if I was using all the brushes and everything else. And I said, yes. I said, I'm here because of what happened and the ulcers. And she's going on and speaking to me as if I was a 12-year-old, right? Maybe even younger. Because all they see is your number, your age number. And I really do think a lot, sadly and mistakenly, think a lot of us older people are plain bloody stupid, which we're not. So she's going on doing a little speech, which is obviously rehearsed because of the patter that was just coming out. And I wasn't in the mood for this nonsense because I knew what she was saying was completely wrong. It were lies, basically. And she's going on about this, and I said, well, if it's that bad, I said, why did the dentist a week ago tell me that things are much better and, I'm doing a good job and it's just these ulcers that she wanted to check? So her words to me were, well, the dentist don't see what an hygienist sees. Now, in my family, there's a lot of medics. And many years ago, I was friend with him and his wife, this lovely dentist who we got to know. My husband was alive then, and, we would meet up occasionally. And he did all my crowns for me at the top. And they're still going 20 odd years later. He was really intelligent. His name was Jonathan. I think it was Jonathan Webb, I think. I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name because I just call him by his first. So it was either Webb or Webster. I think it was Webb. But anyway, he was really experienced, and I was very grateful for how he helped me with my front teeth. So for an hygienist to turn around and say they know better than a dentist with the gums, I think it's disgusting, actually, because the dentists spend a lot longer training, I'm damn sure, than a hygienist. I'm not decrying the job, but when she was going on about this, I started to ask a few questions. And I don't think they went down very well. I mean, the first one was, like I said to you, well, the dentist says it was fine just over a week ago. So, how can things have changed so badly that there was worse than the last time that you seen me, which I knew were just total bull. So I said to her, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Oh, she didn't like that. But I'll say it as it is, and I always will do, because it was just a load of rubbish, stuff to try to scare people, or some might consider it where it's said to either delay you going to see your dentist, because that's how the NHS is now. See, it's a private company, I won't mention, but a great big private American company that's taken over, and they only see X amount of NHS patients. So obviously it's in their interest to stall us. I mean, after the COVID, it must have taken about 3 or 4 years before I actually got to see a dentist again, where I went regular before. And she didn't like what I said. I said, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. I said, no disrespect. I said, that's just my feelings. I've never been backwards at coming forwards, if you get my drift. So I'm going to say it as it was, because I recognised it for what it was. And at the end, she says, you tell the dentist, you're not to come back to me. I won't see you again. And I thought, good. I just said, yeah, okay. Not that that is my place to tell a dentist who to send me to, but I'm not that, no disrespect to any hygienist working. There's some that's good, but I prefer the dentist to do the cleaning and everything anyway, because they're more qualified. And I think some of these jobs are just made in the private industry just for money, money, money. So that was the first thing that happened that week, last week. Well, this week, isn't it? Because we're Saturday today. So that was one. Now, something else that I came across, that I was watching, and I'm going to tell you from my own experience. Let's go to opticians. Now, those of you who have been with me a little while know that, I can't see out that eye. That eye's not good. And I've also, macular pucker in that eye. And I had a brilliant surgeon, and I did an experiment with them for an operation to see if it could be cured, which sadly it couldn't. So I've still got the macular pucker. Even when it's been lasered, I'll still have that. So, I've limited vision because of a little problem in that one, but not at all as bad as this eye. So you're perhaps thinking, well, why am I telling you this on a paranormal channel? Well, you'll get to see. Bear with me to the end. So after all this nonsense, there was all companies, that do franchises all over the country. And I'd been to 2 of these opticians as an NHS patient again, and they never even picked it up. Never even picked up the macular pucker. Never picked any of it up. And they didn't refer me until... No, they didn't refer me. What happened is that I had a very bad flare-up with the eye, and I had to go to the A&E bit of the eye department at the hospital, and they treated it. It took a little while, and that's when they found this out. So why are these opticians, if they are qualified, why wasn't that picked up? Or was it, well, she's a NHS patient, so we weren't bothered to do a full check, because it doesn't matter, because she's getting on anyway, so we don't care. And that's the attitude. Or are they being told by the owners of these big corporations, you do this and you don't mention that, just keep them coming. And let me add, for both appointments, the hygienist this week and in the past the 2 opticians that I had, I was always kept waiting. This week with the hygienist must have been 40 to 45 minutes I was sat waiting. But obviously I have to know my place because I'm NHS, so an appointment is not important for an NHS to be on time when you've got private patients that's got that to pay. So I learned that. I'm not saying I was blind to these things, but I've seen it really work in action. So after the eye issues and at the hospital, and I've got a family member as a medic connected with that sort of thing. I've got a lot of medics in my family, and I decided to go to the optician where she went, and the treatment was so different. first of all, I did ask if they do take NHS, and they said yeah. They said you just have to pay the full whack the first time, which was fine and it was reasonable, and then after that, you know, we can see you. And with this optician, I've never had to wait. You know, it might be 5 minutes if they've overrun or so with another patient, but that's fine. And you're spoken to with respect. And they have sorted me out, and obviously they've written to the surgeon at the hospital, and hopefully, whether it's the end of this year or next year, I will get this one lasered. Okay, not fix the macular pucker, but at least it'll help me to see a little bit clearer. So my opinion of that optician was, you know, 100 out of 100, because all the different treatments that she was giving me, and there was no extra charge, like in these corporation owned ones where you have to pay extra for other eye tests, which, let me add, I did pay at some of those, the other ones, and he never picked up anything, or the people reading the x-rays couldn't be bothered to mention it, or were told not to mention it. So that was something else. Now I'm going to get to the paranormal part of this, and this made my blood boil. Exhausting week. When I came back from all of this that's been happening this week, I put the TV on, and when I'm always meant to know certain things, and I will find out regardless, and it's always been like that throughout my life. I think it's connected with the bloodline, where the psychic ability and everything comes. So I put YouTube on, and on it, I would never normally watch some of these like Evangelist or Born Again or whatever it was. Well, whoever this guy was, if I could have ripped his head off, I would have done. Because talk about trying to scare people to death so they join their ranks and become one of them. This is what happened. Now, again, the ones that's been with me for a long time will know what I'm saying in a minute, because I did do an old vid where I explained about these archons being in places where there's a lot of grief. They're there to suck the energy. So I'm listening to him, and he has the audacity to say on this film, be careful watching this, because it's heavy stuff in it. Now, he was taking quotes from some of the nurses in hospice that had said what the dying people had said and what had happened to some of the dying people. And some of it was wonderful, where they could see Christ had come through, or their, other leaders and things that had come through, they worship, fine, because it's all the same God at the end of the day, unless you're a Satanist, then obviously it's not. And there was telling a few experiences of some of the dying, how they've got Jesus in the room, and family members and husbands or wife, or departed, that they loved and missed, and they came back to them. Now, some people in what I would call the dying profession will hear a lot, and when people are dying, there is these entities even in hospitals where wards are not dying, there are these entities, as I've discussed before, that will try to suck your energy. And to go back, when my husband died and I was in the room, so was other members of my family, and I was holding his hand and obviously there, because one of my jobs is to help people pass over. And that's why I told you a few weeks ago about when they say banshees evil. It's not. That's the Hollywood description. So part of my gift, not a nice one, but is to help people cross off, which I've done with a lot of others, and like I'd done with Marilyn Monroe, as I explained a long time ago. I say that not to because it's a big name drop, but because everybody knows who she is. So I'm just explaining it that way. But whilst I was in this room with my husband, I could feel them. And the surrounded hospitals are surrounded with them. And they are like a dark looking energy. And they even tried to push me away, and they just devour grief, sadness, if you're down and out, if you was feeling suicidal, and also if the dying are in any pain, or horrible things that happen. Not everybody has a good death, unfortunately. Well, it's not because they're waiting to carry them off. It's because they're just sucking the energy out of them, the life force, because that's what feeds them. So without me going into all of that, those that's been here a while will understand, they'll remember what I said on that vid. So when I was hearing this presenter telling all these tales, and in other words, if you don't sort of join my church, this is what's happened. Because one of them, there was one man who was terrified, tried backing up his bed because he kept saying there's dark ones here and they've come to fetch me. Now, and if he was a mass murderer, I think maybe I'd give that a little bit more thought. But seeing as he was just a regular guy, I'd say it was what he was seeing. He could have been hallucinating with this, and obviously he died terrified. And it was what really made me so cross was the way that this presenter was really going into this. And all it was to frighten people into, well, if you don't join my church, this can happen to you. Well, let's be honest, if the evil mass murderers and all the evil people eating babies and things now, you know what I'm saying, so I don't get this stopped. There's all this going off that's been going off maybe from time immemorial, but it's coming out now, and that's good, because we are in a time of nothing being hidden. And if it was that sort of despicable human, I could understand it. But those sort are Satanists. So Satanists have their own rules that they follow. That's up to them. I'm not going to try to convert anybody, and I think if they're very much a Satanist, you couldn't anyway, even if you wanted to. That's their choice, what they're doing and what happens to their soul. Well, whether they believe it's good or bad, I don't know, and I'm not particularly interested, because it's not something I'm interested in. So that really did make me cross, and it's with this vid, what I'm aiming to do is to ask you to please question everything. Don't just go along with what's told because it's a professional that's telling you, because it's somebody that's more in authority that tells you. Use your gut feeling. You know, at one time I'd have been a little bit more subtle and not come out with a few things, you know, to try, you know, to not upset that person's feeling. But not anymore. I'm saying it as it is. No need to be rude to the person, but you're entitled to say, I'm sorry, I don't believe what you're saying because of what I was told by the professional a week ago, or I've been doing everything you're telling me I'm not doing. And, you know, to just go back to the hygienist thing, it was, are you still buying the, no, are you still using the orange, the yellow, the green little things that you put through your teeth? And it's from there that I was buying them. So again, is this another ploy? And my honest belief, as you get older, you clean your teeth, but you don't start beating them up. You know, we're not 20 anymore. And my father was about 86. I think he was 86 before he died, or almost 86. And he'd still got most of his own teeth. And if we go back to my youth, we go back in the 50s or 60s, all that ordinary people had was toothbrushes. Yeah, there was a lot of decay, because a lot of it was they'd not got enough iron and vitamins because of the war, which caused a lot of tooth problems. But even if we go into the 60s, when it was you went to the dentist more regular and everything, then you know, you'd have them checked, and there was none of these other items for sale. But I did notice something as well. When they recline you in a chair, they can get a better handle at doing the teeth than you and I could when we stand up. And if you have a back issue like I've got, you can't just do it yourself. It's impossible. It's just crazy. So again, a shout out to these that's there, trying, you know, like one size fits all. It doesn't. And if you notice, a lot of the dentist brushes are like little tiny ones. I mean, I've looked to see if I could buy one myself, you know, to use, because it would clean even deeper. But I think they're just there for the industry, and that must be taken into account as well. So all in all, it's been an enlightening week. I know some of what I've told you is not paranormal, but it needs to be said, because this is like the dark forces at the back of all these things and the big industries. This is totally dark, trying to suck money out of people, and a lot that haven't got it. I mean, there's a lot that's having to pay private in the UK for the dental treatment now, because the NHS ones are not working for whatever the reasons. So that's their choice. But interesting and enlightening, and I say to you, do not believe everything that you hear, even if it's a professional. Do not believe half of these religious organisations that want to trap you through fear, because that's not spiritual. That isn't spiritual. And if you want anything done, I will always ask the highest God, can you help me with this or whatever? And I can honestly say I've never been let down. The answers will come that way, because we are connected with the Godhead. So that's worth knowing. But churches and things are all man-made. Go if it brings you comfort. Nothing wrong with them, providing they don't start touting this ridiculous crap to scare people into doing it, you know. And the church is responsible for a lot of bad things that's happened to people. And just before I go, that one thing that made me laugh was there was, I'm not sure if it wasn't the Catholic Church actually, but there was one church that people that had been in the war, the relatives was that was really religious, was bothered that the soul would pass over. So they were paying loads of money for these masses that guaranteed that the soul would be okay. How can any priest guarantee that? You know, you can't. Would they not do it without the money, you know? So look into things carefully. That's what this one is about, okay? And again, for the lady that thought this was a book, was interested in what I said last week for a book, it's not, it's a notebook. So there you go. And I think that's all I've got to say for this week. I hope it enlightens you a little bit. That's what this is about. But maybe not all paranormal, but some of it, that with the dying souls. And also it was spiritual, because I experienced and I found out, and I could see beyond the veil with these people that I was dealing with. So although a very tiring week, believe you me, it was a very, very enlightening week. So I'm going to say bye for now. And I will see you next week. I don't know what the topic will be. We'll see what I'm given, and then I will talk on that subject. So, bye for now.